I'm principal at Billesley Primary School. We are a 3-form entry school in South Birmingham. I remember on the day hearing about the role of improvement champion and thinking that's where I think I fit into this. Although I have to say I wasn't entirely clear what the role must be. And then when you look at the kind of job spec in the booklet, you think, oh my gosh, there's a lot to do there and it's challenging. But it appealed to me, I think. I saw it as a challenge for me in terms of working with other professionals and facilitating those workshops. And particularly myself and another colleague, we thought, yeah, that's the sort of thing for us, yeah. My first workshop was with all of the staff in a school, a 1-form entry school, so there's probably about 24 staff. I had a colleague with me, and I would say that's an important part of the improvement champion process, is that you work with a colleague, particularly the planning process. But it did take me quite a while to plan the first one, and I worked out afterwards why. I think what it was is I've got experience of training and delivering training programs, and I think the difficulty reflecting on it was I was trying to write a training program for an hour and a half rather than a facilitator workshop. So that was an important learning curve for me in terms of that. If I reflect on that first one, it was okay, and I spoke to the head afterwards and he was pleased with the workshop, but I feel it was too, if I reflect back, I feel it was too broad. I thought there was too much to explore in an hour and a half workshop. So that was a learning curve for us as a trust in terms of the peer review, but also that conversation between the improvement champion and the lead reviewer to really narrow down what the focus for the improvement workshop would be. My second one I delivered was around reading, and it was about using assessment of reading to inform the reading practice in the classroom. But the planning aspect I felt went better because I was planning to facilitate a workshop, and I was a little bit more comfortable with the analytical tools and the decision-making tools. I tried some of them out in our staff meetings here and in meetings here, so I was more confident in terms of how they'd work. And I think I was more confident in my role that I wasn't expected to give answers. It was just about guiding the staff towards that. Make sure you've had that conversation with the lead reviewer and the head teacher so you are clear on the focus. Plan your key questions and your challenging questions within that workshop. Use the tools, that would be a definite for me. The analytical tools and decision-making tools. And be prepared to step out of your comfort zone. My first, I suppose, at starting the workshop is clarifying my role as an improvement champion, that I'm not the expert, I'm not going to tell you what you should do about reading, I'm going to tell you what you should do about maths. I'm here to guide you towards your learning. I think it's important to share the positives. I think as in schools we're always looking at the next step and what to improve, but it's also important to reflect on what's going well. And I think that's important as well with your audience in the room. So in that particular one, I've got senior and middle leaders. This was about reading. Well, I know that the English lead's going to be in the room, and you don't want to put their back up, as it were, straight away by just talking about what we need to do next. So I think it's important to share that and celebrate that. What is useful, and I've certainly developed this in this role, is having that bit of research to hand to support. And I've done it in different ways where I've sent the research before for people to read, or I've introduced it in the workshop. Just a short bit, but that helps shape people's thinking as well, because it's saying this is something that happens that currently works. Moving through the workshop, I always use two tools. I use an analytical tool. Fishbone analysis is one that I'm particularly fond of. I know other people have other favourites. So we use that really to explore the issue further, and that I find that works well because what you're doing as a facilitator is guiding them through the tool, and the tool kind of is asking those questions and responses to it. You can feed in challenging questions to get people to think deeper within that. Once I've used an analytical tool, I then move into a decision-making tool, and that is vital. I think if you haven't got that decision-making, what you end up with is lots and lots of ideas, and again that can cause confusion in the room, where people are saying, well, what do I do first, which is going to have the most impact, which is not. So I really believe that those decision-making tools are important, and staff like the tools. Most staff haven't come across them. It's something different, it's a different way of thinking for them, and it freshens up rather than doing a brainstorming session or something that might have traditionally happened. At the end of the workshop, a key element is committing to action. And again, you have to be clear that if you're saying, right, what are you going to commit to as an individual or as a group, that's quite challenging for some people. Some people may not feel comfortable in that, and you have to manage that. You then need an action plan, but I think it's important in the role that that's not your role as an improvement champion. That's a school to take on that action plan. And I think the 90-day check-in is a good process within that in terms of following that through. My first question was to a colleague just sat in front of me, and I said, "Oh, did you read the research I sent you through?" And she said, "I scanned it," which put me on my back foot a little bit. And that can be tough, because sometimes the easiest thing is just ignore that. So what did I do? I chose to engage the positives and work with that. When we did some activities, I chose to pair them up, and I paired that colleague with a colleague who got positive influence on that to try and work in that way. But I did challenge that person as well, and I think that helped with the challenging questions that I felt it was my role to challenge appropriately. One of my questions was, what are you going to commit to as an individual? And I knew that was going to be challenging for that person. So just, I suppose, a simple tactic was half an hour before the end of the workshop, I shared that question and said, I'm just making you aware that I am going to ask you this at the end of the session. And it kind of guided them in, so they were aware of that. Our last review was around curriculum and boys' engagement, and at one point in the afternoon we had quite a large review team. There were 5 members of staff on the review team, and we have a review. We always involve our members of staff as well because of that professional dialogue. And in the afternoon, the group were talking, and they were talking about our school, and they were talking about our children, our curriculum, and it was so powerful. There was this mutual respect and this professionalism around the group. And I said to the group, at the time, I said, this is probably one of the best days I've had this year, because we've kind of got licensed to talk about curriculum, to talk about that learning, and it was so positive, that experience, for my staff and the staff from the other schools as well. And just a small one on that day as well, we had a group of boys that spoke with a lead reviewer who interviewed the boys about curriculum, and we didn't prompt them at all, we just sent them in there. And I observed, and it was just fantastic. I was proud of the pupils, particularly as we hadn't prompted, we hadn't guided as you might do if you were in an inspection, being honest. But the way they articulated to the peer review and engaged with him, and he was extremely positive about them. It's certainly developed my use of questioning and my coaching skills. So I will use those questions that we use as part of an improvement workshop. I will use them in my daily practice as well now. I've shared that with colleagues who I work with our executive principal, with my other senior leaders. And often if a colleague comes to me with a tricky problem they've got, I'll point them in the direction of those questions to guide them through. That's certainly supported me. I'm now principal of the school. I was vice principal of the school when I started the project, and there's not a direct correlation there, but it certainly helped develop my confidence in terms of working with other professionals, working with other head teachers, principals, executive principals, because I've had to do that as part of the role, and it pushed me in to do that as part of the role. You need to commit to it, and you need to. I think one of the challenges, which actually the programme can support, is that your cluster needs to have trust and developed. Now, trust won't happen straight away, and I think as a cluster you need to be aware of that, but kind of just take that step and open that book and invite those people into your school.